All right, well, let's bring you this now. Ms. SA Shudufhadzo Musida was a speaker, of course, at this year's United Nations Women Convened event which took place just yesterday. Musida addressed the importance of education for girls and young women, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, the event was, of course, held under the auspices of the Generation Equality Forum, which is a global movement for gender equality. And this is a high-profile advocacy drive to mobilize decision-makers to accelerate action and investment to address the, of course, alarming numbers of adolescent girls and young women acquiring HIV and dying of AIDS. Now, Shudufhadzo Musida joins us live to talk about the, of course, event that took place and her role thereof. Thank you so much for your time, Shudu, and good morning to you. I mean, I think this is an important conversation to have. Your voice quite critical, especially with the realities on the ground, not only in South Africa and in Africa. What was your focus at this event?
Good morning. My focus at the event was to talk about how mental health awareness plays a role in the reduction of HIV and in mitigating its impact, as well as the importance of the empowered mind and just how that can be achieved through education, and basically just promoting or speaking about the importance of the Education Plus joint initiative.
And with that being said, I mean, what do we know right now on the ground about young girls and young women, particularly, the struggles that they're going through and them being exacerbated by COVID-19? Because those stats do show that it seems young girls and young women are bearing the brunt of this pandemic as well.
There really are. Most of the social ills that are in our society predominantly affect adolescent girls and young women. So it's quite important for us to actually focus on them and focus on adolescent girls and young women in order to achieve generation equality. Especially now during the pandemic, everything has been exacerbated, from the gender-based violence and a range of other social ills. So it was quite important for us to address this, especially when it comes to HIV prevention, because the statistics are very alarming when it comes to that in adolescent girls and young women.
Yeah, and with that being said, I know that education is an important part of, your suggested interventions, that young girls have the right to equal educations to their boy counterparts. But we know that even right now with the lockdown, Shudu, I mean, they have to stay at home. They've been at home since at least Wednesday. That's in the South African context, that is, because of level 4 and, the number of infections in the country as well as in the province. I mean, in terms of young girls receiving that education under these circumstances, how do you think they can be better supported right now?
I think it starts with the conversations that we have in our communities, because school is some sort of it's a protective sort of mechanism for young girls. Right now, during COVID-19 and them not being able to go to school, that impacts their mental health in a very big way. So it's quite important for us to actually start conversations within our communities as to how to support them. And that is done through education. That is done through conversations about mental health, I believe. Because as soon as we openly speak about mental health awareness, it's easier for young girls to feel like they've got safe spaces where they can openly discuss how they feel or what support they need in those areas. And mental health awareness plays a huge role in the prevention of HIV. It plays a huge role in gender equality and debunking unequal gender power dynamics and harmful gender norms.
And I know that you're very passionate about mental health, and I just remember having a conversation with a different guest this week saying that we're particularly focusing on the elderly. They were obviously isolated and alone in most of these old age homes in the past, but it seems COVID-19 has exacerbated that sense of isolation and loneliness. And it seems that mental health is a focus that needs to be prioritized, because we're in a very lonely stage of life with this pandemic. And I suppose my question to you is, how do you advise, not only for young girls, but for the youth at this point, how do you advise them sort of debunking some of the myths? Because it seems in certain communities it's still quite taboo to openly speak up and say, hey, I'm not doing well, I'm not coping, with that fear of being seen as, oh, you're either weak or perhaps you're even a coward.
I think it starts, like I said, by bringing these conversations into our homes and into our communities. I think currently, when it comes to mental health or even conversations about HIV, it needs someone to start the conversation. I think it's quite important for us to bring these conversations into those platforms, to move them from being taboo subjects to subjects that are openly discussed, even on platforms such as these. So when it comes to that, I think it's quite important to stop the narratives in communities that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to seek help. It doesn't make you weak, because there's that narrative that because they call mental health struggles they often refer to as silent killers. But if we bring those conversations to the forefront, I always say on my Mindful Mondays initiatives, or even the experts that come in, it sort of relinquishes the power that it has, So once we start these conversations, it's easier for them to actually engage in them and to speak about how, okay, it's okay, I'm not okay. But then there's a role that needs to be played in our structures, where mental health education needs to be integrated into schools for kids at a very young age, because when we normalize these conversations for kids at a very, very young age, they know that me saying that I'm not okay, me saying that I need help, doesn't make me any weaker. Like, it doesn't make me less of a strong person. And I think it's quite important for us in our societies now to start breaking away from that strong person narrative, or that strong woman narrative, because it perpetuates these unequal gender power dynamics and harmful gender norms, both for young girls and young boys as well. It perpetuates so many things in our societies when we speak about, you're a strong person, if you have to endure pain, and I think it's quite important for us to break away from that, especially because if we have to look at it from a different lens when it comes to boys, it perpetuates toxic masculinity.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for highlighting this issue over and over again, Ms. South Africa Shudufhadzo Musida.